Hello and welcome back to the Data Privacy Lawyer. It's Funmi Owolabi, principal attorney at this firm. So I want us to take a look at some cookie-related disclosures by an organization. So we're just basically taking a look at different organizations, how they treat cookies as it pertains to their websites and their obligations under the data protection laws. Now, I only look at the face of the public-facing privacy documentation. I never have insight into an organization from an internal standpoint. So all of our discussions on this site are based on what you and I are both seeing as consumers, right? So we've been presented with the cookie banner. I've talked extensively about the cookie banner. The excellent thing is they have a policy, or a notice, shall I say. We're going to take a look at the notice because we're doing a series on the channel right now. We're looking at cookies, public-facing cookie documentation, what they look like, and then we can make presumptions or assumptions about what an organization is doing internally, where they are with their privacy program, and what organizations should take into consideration if they're looking to create a cookie notice or what it should look like. So I'm going to open this in a new tab. I want us to take a minute looking at the banner. In addition to the cookies that are strictly necessary for the website, Pomellato uses cookies and other tracking tools to remember your preference and propose additional services to measure your website performance, etc. Our partners use trackers to deliver personalized advertising based on your browsing habits and your profile, including by using profiling. Now, this word in the data protection space and as counsel generally requires me to ask many questions to organizations on what they consider to be profiling, because there are many restrictions on how profiling can be conducted by an organization and what you can do. Now, when you're looking at a data privacy lawyer, you might be asking, what is it exactly that we do? We basically tell companies how they can use personal data. And if your organization even has one customer, you use personal data, because there's no way that you have a customer without identifying who the decision maker is that's signing the invoice, at a minimum, okay? Now let's get back to the word profiling. This has many privacy implications for an organization. I don't know what Pomellato considers to be profiling, okay? But that's something that you and your privacy counsel can take a look at to determine, one, should you be doing it in the geography that you operate? And two, what are the restrictions on how you can profile an individual in your geography in a compliant manner under the data protection laws? So we've looked at the banner. I'm going to manage my settings, and then we're going to get into the cookie policy. They call it a policy. I've talked about this in other discussions. I think what's very excellent about Pomellato is that I have not been opted in to any of these. And I think the reason why is because Pomellato appears to be a European Union headquartered organization. So their approach to cookies is very Euro-centric. That being said, they provide their goods and services in the United States. So when I'm managing my consent preferences here, I've been opted out. All of these are on black, okay? If I opt in, it'll turn to green, okay? Some organizations, because I'm accessing the site from the United States, will have all of these on green, and then they'll give me the opportunity to opt out. Now, that's a very important distinction because it shows the obligations a company has depending on geography. I talk about that all the time, and it's one of the first questions I ask any organization. Where are you providing your goods and services? Because that will influence what privacy laws apply to you. This is a very Eurocentric consent preference center, which I appreciate because the European Union has one of the most restrictive data protection laws. In my opinion, it's not the most restrictive because there are other countries that have even higher restrictions for certain processing activities. Now, if you're an organization, you want to know more details about that, we can talk about that offline. But it is very restrictive in many respects than more geographies where an organization might process personal data, particularly when it comes to cookies. Now, we're not going to dwell too much on that. I do want to spend some time looking at the cookie notice, but I'm going to confirm my choices. Excellent. So it seems like every page that you visit for Pomellato, you are presented with this cookie banner. So again, this is a very Eurocentric approach to utilizing cookies, because even though I had just managed my cookie settings on a different web page, I'm again being presented with it here. So I'm going to manage the settings again, confirm my choices, but you are changing your browsing country. It looks like you're located in the United States. We talked about geography, right? We're actually going to visit the US one. Okay. And we can see here that you can manage your cookie settings at any time. That's really excellent. let's go to the bottom. I want to take a look at privacy and cookies. So Pomellato had actually combined the privacy and cookie notice. Cookie policy. Now, I am intrigued about why they've considered this to be a cookie policy. The terminology is more important to me for other legal professionals as opposed to consumers. A lot of consumers don't know what the difference is between a notice and a policy. So that may be why they've used this terminology here, but they've actually combined the documentation. Now, I will say one thing. Most consumers are not going to read this entire privacy notice and cookie notice, which is why a lot of organizations will split them up to make it easier for reading. A lot of times, the individuals reading privacy notice and cookie notice are one, individuals like myself, like privacy lawyers, because we're the ones that draft these. And secondly, it would also be regulators. They would be most interested in these documentations, which is why terminology is going to be really important. And generally, the disclaimer or disclosures that an organization places on their site are just notice of what they're doing. A policy is going to go into more detail about what internal rules an organization is going to do when it comes to cookies. This generally is just like, hey, consumer of Pomellato goods and services, this is what we do with cookies. A policy is going to say, hey, generally, employees, this is how we use cookies. This is what you should do. This is what our audit is going to look like. There's a lot more details that go into a policy generally. So one thing that I want to talk about is I love that there are definitions of what constitute a session cookie and a persistent cookie. I think that the audience is very important when an organization has these public-facing documentations, and that's also something that a regulator would be interested in because they want to make sure that you are presenting your privacy policies in a way that your audience is going to be able to understand. If you're using a lot of legalese, and what I mean by legalese is the tone of your public-facing documents is for a legal audience like a privacy lawyer, it indicates that your privacy program needs some optimization because your documentation should be reflective of the people that are going to be reading it. So if you're creating internal cookie policies, for example, you need to think about the level of sophistication that your employees have when it comes to personal data, and you need to draft it in a manner that, one, they're going to want to read it, two, make it mandatory that they read it so they understand, and three, make it simple enough that they're not going to be questioning every single provision, like what does that mean, okay? So adding definitions is a must-have, particularly for public-facing cookie notices. The other really good distinction is the obligations when it comes to first-party cookies and third-party cookies. The way that technology is utilized in 2025 is far more sophisticated than it was in 2018, and third-party cookies are becoming more and more essential for businesses to be able to understand what their consumers want. If your business is in the area of commerce, meaning that you are selling a good or service, you want to know how best to target individuals so that they buy more of your products and services. And one of the ways that you can leverage that as an organization is you can utilize third-party cookies, because the sophistication of the technology that a third-party cookie might give you may be more than those operated from a first-party perspective. Now, we're not going to go too much into detail about terminology. I might do that in a separate video. But what I really want to provide emphasis is it's really good that Pomellato has provided definitions for what types of cookies are being utilized that they use, because one, they need to do that under the data protection law anyway. But allowing consumers to understand that third-party cookies do exist. And internally, one of the things that a cookie policy might discuss is how third-party operate on the site, how they're allowed to, and then from a contractual standpoint, language that provides restrictions on what can be done by a third party as it pertains to cookies, because there's a lot of sophistication that goes into the contracts when a third party is placing a cookie on a business's website. The other thing that I want to make note of before we end this audit is when we were looking at the cookie settings before, we saw that Pomellato had offered insight into strictly necessary cookies. So the definition they've provided here about these cookies should also be reflected in this cookie settings section. Same with performance and analytics cookies, functionality cookies, and then social cookies. All of that should be referenced here. This should be the same. So I really hope you enjoyed this audit. If your business is looking to have a cookie policy created or insight into making sure that your cookie policy or notice is compliant with the data protection laws, take a look at my description below, and I'll see you in another audit.